Good evening, dear audience of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada. On behalf of the Institute, I welcome all of you to our important webinar today. And our title of the webinar is Bangladesh's Indo-Pacific Outlook and Rising US Interest in the Region, What Lies Ahead. Today we have a special guest from Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed from University of Dhaka. Welcome, sir, to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, Kausar.
And today we also have our advisor, Professor Dr. Hilal Mohiuddin, who teaches in North-South University in Bangladesh, also with us. The audience, before I begin engaging our esteemed guest today, let me do the treaty recognition. Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada is located on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homelands of Métis Nation. We are promise-bound in the spirit of reconciliation, and we work together for the common good of the Indigenous people of Canada. The audience, as I said, we have a special guest today, and I'm going to read his bio briefly, and he doesn't need any introduction actually. And Dr. Imtiaz is a foremost scholar in international relations in South Asia, and he comes from Bangladesh. So as you all know, he was born in Bangladesh, and he's a professor of international relations and director, Center for Alternatives, Dhaka. Professor Ahmed was educated at the University of Dhaka, the Australian National University, Canberra, and Carleton University of Ottawa. So we do have a Canadian connection here. And he's also currently visiting professor at Taylor's University, Kuala Lumpur. Professor Ahmed is the recipient of various awards and honors. He has authored, co-authored, and edited 51 books and 18 monographs. More than 125 research papers and scholarly articles have been published in leading journals and chapters in edited volume. He earned his PhD from Carleton. So this is very briefly because his bio actually needs more than a minute of reading. So thank you so much, sir, for coming in. And just before I invite him for his monologue, I think it's pertinent to give our audience a brief overview what is Indo-Pacific strategy. So in order to do so, I take the privilege of letting you know, and I'll start first with the importance of this region that we are talking about today. And Indo-Pacific, as you all know by the name itself, we are talking about Indian Ocean region, which also borders Bay of Bengal. And it comprises actually 40 countries and economies. And a brief stat of the importance of the region is about 50% of world GDP by 2040 will come from the region. 50% of global greenhouse gas emission will be occurring here. 65% of world population live in this region. 67% of world's indigenous people also live in this area. 37% of the world's poor are also hail from this area. And 1 in 5 Canadians, I'm talking about Canadian context here, have family ties here. And finally, US $29.3 trillion combined GDP of top 5 compared to US 17.2 trillion in whole EU 27 nations. So this is the enormous potentials and opportunities in this region, as experts opined. And let's quickly review, as I said in our title, that we are talking about US rising interest. So what US has given in terms of their strategy. I'm just reading out White House's document. It's called Fact Sheet Indo-Pacific Strategy of the United States. It has 5 cornerstones. First, it talks about free and open. And there they talk about investing in democratic institutions, a free press, and a vibrant civil society. And I would end up requesting Dr. Imtiaz to comment why US is interested in their huge strategy in investing democratic institution, free press as the #1 point in their Indo-Pacific strategy. Second thing they mention about the connectedness, deepening their 5 regional treaty alliances with Australia, Japan, Republic of Korea, Philippines, and Thailand. They have multiple points under it. I'm not going there, but third point or the principle is prosperous. And there they talk about develop new approaches to trade that meet higher labor and environmental standards, and of course, advance resilient and secure supply chain. The fourth cornerstone is secure. For 75 years, US has maintained a strong and consistent defense presence in the area And therefore, they talk about advancing integrated deterrence. And this is another point that I'm going to go back to Professor Dr. Imtiaz in the second segment when we engage him in dialogue, that what does deterrence means in this current world scenario and geopolitical reality. And final point about US strategy talks about resilient, working with allies and partners to develop 2030 and 2050 target strategies, plans, and policies consistent with limiting global temperature in that increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this is all about Americans, and Canada has a very, I would say, similar strategy, echoing a number of challenges. But like Americans, Canadians also have five corner points. And as I said, these are pretty similar. First, talks about promote peace, resilience, and security, expand trade, investment, supply chain resilience, invest in and connect people, build a sustainable green future. And finally, Canada is an active and engaged partner to the Indo-Pacific. And as you all know, Canada is an observer to ASEAN. India, the biggest neighbor and rising power in the region, has also expressed their strategy, shared their strategy, which talks about maritime security, ecology, maritime resources, capacity building and resource sharing, disaster risk reduction management, science, technology, and academic cooperation, trade, connectivity, and maritime transport as seven pillars of their strategy. And finally, and last but not the least, Bangladesh. On 24th April, Bangladesh has published its Indo-Pacific Outlook. So here is a term that Bangladesh particularly chose to use, not as a strategy and outlook. So here again, we'll go back to Professor Dr. Imtiaz if he kindly comments about the choice of words. However, Bangladesh has formulated its 15-point objectives based on foreign policy statements, for example, friendship towards all and malice to none, and constitutional mandates and conduct of international relations. So they have actually echoed the fundamental principles of Bangladesh foreign policy. So it's a long list of 15 points. And again, I'm not reading out all the points for the sake of time, but final point, which I'm going to go to Professor in the dialogue session. Bangladesh talks about strengthen collaboration, cooperation in science, technology, research, innovation for shared benefits of all in keeping with the vision of smart Bangladesh by 2041. So we'd request our esteemed guest to kindly share his insights about smart Bangladesh and the challenges therein. So without further ado, the audience, I've taken quite a bit of time to lay the context, because our Canadian audience might not be very much informed about Indo-Pacific region and what goes on there. So without further ado, Professor Dr. Imtiaz, sir, please come in, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kausar, for giving me the opportunity. Let me also thank the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, based in Manitoba, for giving me the opportunity to share my understanding of the topic that was given by CRRIC, and that is Bangladesh's Indo-Pacific Outlook and rising U.S. interest in the region. What lies ahead? Now, what I will do, I thought of, when I got the topic, I sat down and thought that best would be to divide them into three sections. And the first section is mainly some general observations to give a background as to why we are talking about this and why we need to know some of the developments that have taken place, so that we can understand why Bangladesh has come up with this Outlook paper. Well, first of the general comment would be that the global world is transforming, and it's transforming from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. The world never saw multipolarity. They saw in some regions, Europe had multipolar, South Asia, Africa, but not on a global scale. We started with a unipolar. If you are familiar with global history, Pax Britannica, that was the first unipolar who succeeded in making a kind of a polar globally, where they used to say that the sun never sets uh, in British Empire. That was the first unipolar. And then after Second World War, we had the bipolar with the defeat of the Nazis, and the rise of Soviet Union, and quite a a horrendous one, I would say, in terms of transformation, because you have 22 million Russians got killed, 6 million Jews were killed, not to mention Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Uh, Overall, 66 million people died in 6 years. That was the largest number of people killed in war since uh, people started keeping records of the death. So one can imagine what a horrendous transformation from unipolar to bipolar, and that was the end of Pax Britannica. But we had an interesting bipolar with United States leading and Soviet Union leading the other. Now that also ended with Gorbachev dismantling Soviet Union in the 80s, and we were back to unipolar for quite some time. That unipolarity under the leadership of US, that is coming to an end. It's already in the decline. There's no way to reverse that. Well, there are people in the West probably who'd want to reverse that, would want to contain it, but the human aspiration has been such. Following decolonization of the world, you had X number of countries come in, not only China, but also India would be one, Brazil, of course, South Africa, Turkey. Series of countries have come up, and one can easily see, and of course, a little bit of Russia also. And so we are moving towards the multipolar world, and there is no way to stop that. Now, the title says rising US interest. I wouldn't say it's rising US interest. The US was always interested because it was unipolar. It had to be interested in the global affairs. That is how it is structured. And one can see even in Indo-Pacific, it was always interested. If you look at the number of military bases that the United States has in the Indo-Pacific region, some figures say over 300, military bases. That will, give you a sense that the United States was always involved in Indo-Pacific and in the world affairs. Let's put it that way. And it has to be, because if you are a superpower, you need to keep your eyes and ears and whatever you have throughout at the global scale. Now, that would bring me to the second point, that the U.S. interest was there. Now, what has happened there? Now, here we need to understand that it's humans who create geopolitics. Geopolitics does not create humans. This is very fundamental. So what has happened in the Indo-Pacific, you had some transformation of some of the economies, and that has made the United States, I would say, now one of the actors in the Indo-Pacific. New actors have come up because they have transformed their economies in many ways. Even Bangladesh, I would say, the interest that a lot of countries are now taking in Bangladesh. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, it is the geography location." No, geography was always there. We were not anywhere else. The reason why it changed recently is because humans in Bangladesh transformed it. The leadership and humans, we had a good growth for over a decade. Some say over 6% continuously. Even during the pandemic, we had growth. So, given that point, the reason why Bangladesh is now important is that I always say we have some honey. As Nazim Hikmat's one of the famous lines that he had was, Nazim Hikmat is a Turkish poet, and he said, "If there is honey in my pot, bees will come from Timbuktu. So you don't have to worry about the bees; they will come." So the bees are coming back. Now that brings me to the third point. in Asia, what we had is re-rise of Asian economies, not the rise of Asian economies. And I say re-rise of Asian economies because back in the 18th century, China was the largest economy in the world, and undivided India was the second largest in the world. And in that undivided India, Bengal was the richest province. Now, Bengal got cartographically massacred, no doubt about it, but still, the present Bangladesh, if you speak on Bangladesh, is the seventh largest country in the world, seventh or eighth largest country in the world. It's huge in terms of its market. It's not a small country at all. It's huge. 170 plus million people. If you compare with Canada, you can easily see probably Dhaka's population would be Canada's population, to almost match that. So well, you can imagine it's a very big country, and when it will become a developed country, you can easily see it probably would request for a UN permanent seat also at that particular time, given it's in the first 10. So what we have is the rise of Asian economies. Now, the interesting part of the United States economy, and if you want to compare that with India or China or even Bangladesh, United States economy has a kind of intricate relationship with military-industrial complex. It's part of the military-industrial complex. If you're familiar with President Eisenhower's farewell speech, and he knows very well, he was himself a military officer, so he pointed out that to the United States, to the Americans, that you need to be careful about this military-industrial complex, and you need to tackle that. But unfortunately, nobody wants to tackle the military-industrial complex, and it is still a very, very big, it has a budget of, 900 billion to 1 trillion military budget is huge. The next 10 matches what the United States spends in the military. So India or China, to give an example, their economy is not based on military-industrial complex. China, of course, is in a very way based on globalization, and we are now seeing even India trying to match this globalization kind of economy. It lagged a little bit, largely because it tried to develop nationally. It was not as what you call imaginative as Deng Xiaoping, who came very early and took advantage of globalization. That was the magic of Deng Xiaoping, take advantage of globalization and made a difference to what China is today, and has an economy which can be called, or some critics have called, Capi communism, blending capitalism with communism. Now, that kind of blending has not taken place in India, but India as a democratic country is also getting globalized in many ways. Its position in Africa has transformed in a very big way. We see Narendra Modi's visit to Egypt. That will also tell you that the transformation that is taking place. So the re-rise economies are more connected to globalization and not on the military-industrial complex. And that's the difference. So when you have globalization, they would want stability. They don't benefit from instability. But not all economies benefit from stability. There are economies who benefit from instability because they can sell weapons. Even if there's no war, if there is a likelihood of war, then, weapons get sold. I guess Ukraine would be a very good example from that point of view. My fourth and the final observation would be that the binary that we have or that we had, called democracy and authoritarianism, that has lost its relevance. So we play with that binary, and Kausar was mentioning about U.S. policy and having a free press and civil society and all those things. And this is clear from Narendra Modi's visit. If you look at the turnaround of Democratic Party, despite 75 members of the Congress saying were critical, as you know, of the visit, and some actually boycotted Narendra Modi's speech, but that did not stop Joe Biden in making a very good, kind of a agreement and declaration. So he's almost turning, 180 degree, and everything was forgotten because I'm sure some of you are familiar that when Narendra Modi was in Gujarat, the chief of Gujarat, he was even barred, did not get the visa, but that's history. I think one has to give credit to Narendra Modi that he succeeded in 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 opening up and to the point that the United States has forgotten everything that it used to play around with the word democracy and human rights and all those things. So even with a very negative image that India currently has, even in the United States press, and with scholars and with researchers and activists, that did not stop. So there's democracy, authoritarian binary that we had, because some of the authoritarian, quote unquote, authoritarian countries are have shown difference in terms of governance, in terms of professionalism. Take for example Singapore. Singapore is also not invited to the Democratic Summit of Joe Biden. Was never, did not get invitation. But U.S. investment in Singapore is larger than U.S. investment in India, China, and South Korea collectively. It's huge, and that's also is the magic of Lee Kuan Yew, that he succeeded in making what Singapore is all about, even with the authoritarian. But it's a very professional. Nobody would doubt its governance, and I think that kind of professionalism you see in some of the other authoritarian, quote unquote, authoritarian countries, as would be the case of China as well. So this binary is collapsing because some of the democratic countries are also in a soup. Of course, United States is in a real soup. Joe Biden can be the president, but Donald Trump still doesn't agree that he's the president, and Donald Trump has a support base of over 70 million, 70 million people. So you can imagine the context that I'm talking about. The attack on the Capitol Hill and the Voter Suppression Act and all those things would also tell you that the democracies are not perfect as much as the non-democratic countries are also not perfect. So this binary is getting collapsed, and Narendra Modi's successful visit to the United States, I think, shows that. Now, that's the context, of the four general observations that I made in order for us to understand what is Bangladesh's position and what is this Indo-Pacific outlook is all about. Now, this particular document is interesting and historical, I would say, because it's the first time you have a kind of a strategy paper that Bangladesh has come up, and there's good reasons for Bangladesh to come up. One, as I pointed out, that there has been a little re-rise of Bangladesh as well. In many ways, a lot of people see hope in Bangladesh. There's a lot of attention, and it's not only the election thing and election year. Even last 2-3 years, you have seen the attention that Bangladesh is getting even after pandemic. Has successfully tackled, I would say, the pandemic in many ways. It is yet to tackle the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war. That's true, but I would say it has created a kind of a space where there's a lot of attention. So Bangladesh has a unique, what you call, kind of a development, and I think that is what Bangladesh was trying to flag. Now, when I say unique development, it's a development without, I say a development without enemies. It's absolutely development without enmity. We literally don't have enemies. That's an interesting part. Even Myanmar is trying its level best to make us an enemy, but somehow Bangladesh has refused to call Myanmar an enemy, and we want to resolve the issue that we have on the Rohingya bilaterally, if possible. Otherwise, we would love to have it resolved bilaterally, but I guess now with the trilateral arrangement, with China coming in, or if there is some other international group who wants to resolve it, Bangladesh would be very happy. So in that context, I think what we need to understand about IPO is this the transformation that has taken place in Bangladesh in last 52 years. Let's put it that way. from an international basket case to a kind of a role model of development. Well, you can be critical of development, that it is skewed, and the gap has increased, it's skewed to a particular group, and there's a gap between rich and poor. You can come up with all those criticism, but the fact remains that it is no longer an international basket case, and that's a consensus you will get from everywhere, from every side. And any person coming to Bangladesh would know that the body language has changed. Let's put it that way. Bangladesh that we had in 70s and 80s, and if you talk now, it's not the same body language. It's different, and you can see that visible. So from that point of view, IPO is actually what I would say a document in political economy. It was required, but it's no. And this is the reason I think I was asked to explain also why it is outlook and not a strategy or something. Bangladesh wants to get away from the security military understanding of the world. Let's put it that way. Bangladesh has a unique way of looking at things, and I think it's very appropriate that they came out with a different concept called outlook, rather than a strategy. It's not. We are not engaged, as I say. It's a development without enmity, and there are good reasons for that. And this brings me to the point of IPU itself. And Kausar has already flagged that the first guiding policy of IPO is friendship towards all, malice towards none. Now, people think that this is something where Bangladesh plays with this particular, dictum, which is not actually. Bangladesh has been very firm on that. And it goes back the first time one could see Bangabandhu flagging that in the police report, one gets as early as 1966, when Bangabandhu flagged this whole understanding that Bangladesh, at that time we were part of Pakistan, but still the idea was friendship towards all, malice towards none. That got formalized for the first time in 1970, before Bangladesh became independent, in the election manifesto of the Awami League, of course, under the leadership of Bangabandhu. Now that, I think, is very important. People think that it is something that Bangladesh plays after independence and wants to get. No, it has been part of the civilizational quest of Bangladesh. This is absolutely part of what a Bengali is all about. And a Bengali would always, or a Bangladesh should always invite everyone. Kausar knows very well. They would not mind inviting anyone, and have a adda or have a discussion for hours. That's what a Bengali is all about. That civilizational quest got identified in the Awami League document back in 1970, and of course, keep in mind that 1970 or 1966, when it was first flagged, the whole world was bipolar. And absolutely a Cold War of this current quote unquote Cold War is more manageable, I would say. But look at that time; it was absolutely a kind of a black and white or red and pink and kind of a thing. It's either you're with me or you're not. At the height of Cold War, I think this one has to give credit to Bangabandhu coming up with this understanding of keeping more faith in the civilization, that it's an old civilization. Bengal can go back, or Bangladesh can go back as early as 6th century BC. We are a very old civilization. We may have come up in 1971, much older than the United States and Canada in terms of civilization. And we had as early as 6th century BC. We also had republics. One of the first republics, people now say, is Lichavi republics, which was part of Bengal at that particular time. Now, so the guiding principle of friendship towards all, malice towards none is critical. If you look at the other guiding policies, in terms of constitutional mandate, the third would be the UN treaties, agreeing to the treaties and international conventions, and also the regional and international cooperation. All those policies would tell you very, very, very quickly that Bangladesh is for peace. That is not for competition. We are not into engaged in in defeating anyone, in emerging in a way of putting others behind. No, no, we want everyone to rise, and that's the point I think one can easily get. Now, this is important, and here I want to, very quickly bring this concept of scarcity and versus abundance. Is a somehow international relations, bulk of it is based on realism. People say, "Oh, I am a realist." Now, when we talk about realism, keep in mind its basis is fear, because the dominant or the hegemonic discourse that we have is based on theory of scarcity. Whole economics as a discipline is found, and if you look at the foundation of economics, is actually theory of scarcity. So how you manage the scarcity. Now, that's one way of looking at the world, and the scarcity and realism itself will actually reproduce fear. And fear has a very serious issue psychologically, if you remember, because fear, it's intolerance, which creates the fear, and fear creates hatred, and hatred creates violence. And that is what realism has been preaching all through. And that's the reason why countries after countries have gone through this, what you call, building weapons after weapons, because that is what realism tells you. Because, you're insecure. Mahatma Gandhi used to dislike this realism like anything. You'll hardly find him using the word realism at all. People would say he was in idealism framework, but I think he was trying to give something more. And this is what I would say, this what Bangladesh, I think, has done almost unwittingly or unknowingly, is that they're focused more on abundance. That let's look into abundance and not on scarcity. And one good example would be our population, which is in huge, and we have made a difference with the population when it comes to globalization and the remittances, for example, in from that point of view. But there's other abundance that we have is water. We are yet to make that, but the focus is more on abundance. And IPO actually is not so much a realist document as much as a document more founded on abundance, and that is what I want to focus on. And this becomes clear if you look at the 15-point objectives. I was trying to do a content analysis and to see what are the concepts used, because sometimes the policymakers would use it without thinking of that somebody would do a content analysis of what are the words that have been used. Look at some of the words, and it will give you a sense of the abundance that I was pointing out. Partnership, cooperation, collaboration, inclusive, connectivity, global value and global public goods, solidarity. None of that are alienating. All are bring everyone together. This is the important part of the IPO document. So I'm not sure, the policymakers may not agree with me. I'm not a part of the policy making, but I want to flag this idea that it has remained true to the civilizational quest, and not to mention has really concentrated on the abundance, on human abundance actually, and the possibility of everyone to work together and everyone to prosper. There is no idea in the IPO which will say that I want to rise. It's not like MAGA, make America great again, or make India great again. Nothing of this. It's not like make Bangladesh great again. That's not the policy. The policy is make humans great again. And I'm sure Bangladeshis cannot in any way, even if they don't read all the 36 volumes of Tagore, it's very much Tagorean. Our is the human aspirations, and we look at the world from the point of view of humans and not from the point of view of territorial. territory and geography and all those things. So my take on IPO is it's a political economy document, no doubt, document by which you invite others, investors and all, but at the same time, a document very much based on the theory of abundance, and not on a scarcity, so that everyone can feel comfortable. Now that brings me to the third section, and I'll stop in 5 minutes, so that we can have some time to interact. What lies ahead? Well, again, three things. One will be, there will be push and pull in this transformation from unipolarity and multipolarity, and but that will be more rhetoric than real. And Narendra Modi's visit to United States tells you that there were a lot of rhetoric in from the United States, particularly about India, about Narendra Modi and all. It's now rhetoric rather than real. The real is, no, we need each other, and the understanding probably from United States side is China. That is the issue. I have already written on that. I don't think India is aligning with the United States to counter China. That's not what India is all about. India has its own way of looking at things, which is very much clear in Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar's book, The India Today, The India Way. I request, it's a fascinating book that I've gone through and I've read it. I congratulated him personally, actually, when I met him, that it's a very good book that you have written. And I don't know why Europeans are after you, because, as you know, he has gone viral with some of the visits that he made in Europe. If they had read his book, they would understand what he's talking about. It's India way, is absolutely. So I don't see matching of minds between Modi and Biden on that. And United States would, I think, would know very quickly. Give them a month or two, or till the BRICS summit. I think they will know that India has own way of dealing with things, because, as I said, it is one of the polars. Don't underestimate the rise of India is as important as the rise of some other countries. So in this age of multipolarity, there will be push and pull. We need to get used to it. This is the new normal. Bangladesh gets worried when it becomes, when they hear this, they really get worried. But the point is, this is the new normal. Now, the rise of multipolarity will also tell you that there is a limit for one country to impose its will on others. That is not wrong. Because the moment you do that, you actually push that country to other poles. And it is clear from, and I don't want to give examples, but it's very clear from different scenarios around the world. Don't push. We are not in a unipolar world. So you really can't push a country. That doesn't work in multipolar. You need to navigate in a way where you win over rather than you alienate the person. Because the moment you alienate, it's not like it will go to the opposing camps, but there are several polars and it will try to play around. And the third, what lies ahead, is because of this complex structure that is coming up, statecraft is now a more serious business than ever. You literally need Henry Kissinger everywhere. Let's put it that way. You need Metternich everywhere, or you need Chanakya Kotilla everywhere. Let's put it there. But there's no way you can do it just regularly. You need very qualified statecraft, and you need to invest in that, because that's important. The person needs to be what you call as much conversant in history, as much in science, as much in the global affairs. And I think Jaishankar is a good example of it. Let's put it that way. One of the leading diplomats that we have in this region. So my point would be that statecraft is no more something which is ordinary, something that can be done just as part of bureaucracy. No, statecraft is now a very serious business given the complexity. Now, Let me end by saying, what should Bangladesh do in this scenario to keep the momentum outlined in the IPO? Because you flag IPO, that's fine, but you need to keep the momentum, and that's very important. Uh, what I just want to end by saying that Bangladesh must display, and I use three P's. Uh, Three P's. The first P is power. Bangladesh must display power, and this is power through economic and human development, not based on military power. And this is very important. And it must display as much as possible the economic potential and the human potential. So one big P would be power. The next would be politics. Uh, and this is very critical. I know there are people who say that when it comes to Bangladesh foreign policy, it's a divided country. There's no consensus. It's very polarized. Now, when it comes to foreign policy, consensus may not be always good. I know I can get in trouble by using all these remarks, but consensus may not be always good when it comes to foreign policy and all. I think Nazi Germany would be a good example, where the consensus in Germany was really bad. There should have been serious polarization to stop Hitler. Let's put it that way. Look at what you call the outcome of that consensus. So consensus is not always good. Sometimes polarization, as I say, polarization is not always bad. It can actually help the ruling regime to get a lot of things from the other side, pointing out that, look, the alternative is really bad. So if you don't want to bargain with me, you can see who is behind me. You are going to have a tough time. So better you bargain with me. So politics would be with the other one, and how you display. And here, Kausar was telling me to reflect on smart Bangladesh. Here, your politics must be equally smart. Before you make Bangladesh, your economy has to smart, your technology has to smart, but your politics, it has to be smart as well. So I would flag the idea of a smart politics when it comes to, and as I said, based on economic and human development, and not conniving to be partner of here and there militarily. And the last one, and that brings the last one, is professionalism. The last P is professionalism at all levels. And this is where the democratic authoritarian binary that I was referring to earlier, which I said has collapsed, because some of the countries have really come up based on professionalism. Again, Singapore would be a very good example. It's a population of only 6 million people, but look, it emerged as a developed country in Lee Kuan Yew's own lifetime, and it has made a difference to its people. There are other countries as well, I would say, when it comes to professionals. You can't have or you can't make Bangladesh grow by not investing in this professionalism, and I mean professionalism at all level. So I would end by saying that if pursued and practiced well, or should I say smartly, IPO will help attract business and investments to the country and contribute to Bangladesh's political economy. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, it was such a well-rounded discussion coming from history and giving us the philosophical, underlying factors that really propelled Bangladesh to this place, and also the Indo-Pacific Outlook. The audience will have a couple of minutes to engage the professor with some of the lingering questions that both Dr. Hilal and I were thinking, and I'll take some questions from the audience just to make sure that we are in time. So I would invite Dr. Hilal to first kindly come in and have your questions, sir. So very briefly, go ahead and with your question, Dr. Hilal.
Thank you very much, Professor Imtiaz, for your well-rounded discussion on the topics. When Dr. Kausar started, there were a big package of questions and reflections. We expected something more from you, and something has confused me quite as well. One is about the body language. I am always confused about this body language, especially in geopolitical contexts. Whether these body languages are emerging, all of us are noticing that, and these emerging body languages are sometimes very uncomfortable for some people who are thinking seriously about finding out some solutions on big problems. Like one of the problems, for an example, Rohingya crisis. We know that it was concocted, it was staged completely by the Chinese people, the China. China was the big player. When we are talking about friendship to all, allies to none, we don't really explicitly or clearly mention that because it can create diplomatic rift and other tensions. And we always want to avoid that. But we know that underlying reason to clear up the villages after villages was to establish a special economic zone there. And they have already installed all the facilities and all the utilities there, the train line, rail line, gas line, and deep sea port, everything, whatever is needed. So when a friend is creating a big trouble for us, like China, the Rohingya crisis, I am becoming very straightforward in this context because we are having serious trouble to just find out a good strategy or good outlook about the Rohingya repatriation and the resettlement, how it will be done. So when a friend behaves this way, can we really depend on such a friend to solve other problems in our country, especially when we are in some kind of diplomatic rift with United States? We know it's a very clear, and even the common people in Bangladesh now know all these geopolitical relationships. They can easily explain these things. That okay, this is happening this way, but everyone are very concerned and very alerted that China has only one interest. This is not really military interest they never had. As you mentioned very clearly, and we all know that they have took the best advantage of the globalization flow. And because of the globalization, they made a tremendous, you know, difference in economic development and becoming a economic superpower power not only in their country but also in colonial terms as well. Like 23 African countries are now a kind of small periphery and backyard of China. The same thing is happening in Bangladesh. They have business interest there mostly. So in this situation, can we really go with this kind of a little bit elevated body language when sometimes it doesn't really make proper diplomatic sense either? So this is one big question. And the second question to you is about the humanitarian aspect that you are seeing a very positive development there, that now we are not talking militaristically, and we are focusing more on our human resources, our assets, and humanitarian considerations are getting prominence than any other issues, especially these days, this time. But now the confusion is that then why the United States and some European countries are blaming us for gross human rights violations and all other things. So it is a big confusion not only to me, for many others as well, that actually in which aspects we are focusing on humans. Like people are asking about the voting rights and the voice of the civil society. These two are really fundamental things. I need to speak, and I need to speak freely, and I would not be under surveillance of someone when I am saying something true. So what are the developments actually in these contexts are more important, because these people are getting all these excuses to blame us. So why are we really creating all these excuses, and do we have real strategy, real outlook to respond to them in a very positive manner so that the whole world becomes convinced that okay, this is making a good sense and this is why you are doing these kind of things. So these are the two main points that I really wanted to have some reflection from you, especially in geopolitical. And one thing I really liked is about outlook, not strategy. That's fine, it's very diplomatically sound and intellectually sound as well. I am really interested to know whether the other countries, other partner countries, and collaborators also using this concept, this term, other than strategy. That would clear out some clouds at least in our discussion. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very much.
Shall I shall I answer, Kausanda? Okay,
you.
thank you, Hilal. Uh, uh, you know, Rohingya issue is much more complex than blaming one particular country, uh, whether they want to clear that region, because that would not make sense, because you need people. If you want to develop something, you need people, and they would have got those people in a much in a cheaper way. Even if you want to bring roads and highways, you need people to do that. I think it's much more complex. If you are familiar with Azim Ibrahim's book, you will see the silent genocide, and it started long, long back. So to blame, and there was no China at that particular time, of the kind of China that we are talking about now. So to blame one country, whereas let's be honest on that. The only one country which has taken a tripartite, what you call an understanding to resolve this, is China. I have been telling other countries in different platforms. I remember even telling the Japanese ambassador that why not Japan? You have good relationship with Myanmar. You have good relationship with Bangladesh. And even I say to India, why not India? India has good relationship with Myanmar. India has good relationship with Bangladesh. Why not you take a tripartite approach? None of them have taken a tripartite approach. Now, only one country has taken a tripartite approach, and then we started blaming. Well, it has not. We have to see where it unfolds. My hunch is that there will be a repatriation of some kind. We don't know how, when it will end, but at least we know will begin, because China equally is adamant in having this repatriation, at least to start as a pilot project. So I would not take that. But let's look at some of the things that has happened to Bangladesh. Now, when the World Bank refused to give money to the on the Padda Bridge for this alleged corruption, which they never could prove, etc., it was in the Canadian, also, and they have said no, nothing of that kind. Who came forward to help? You wouldn't have the Padda bridge. We'd have just kept quiet. The whole technical support came from them, and we got up on the bridge. You can talk about other bridges as well. Historically, they have been into bridge making in Bangladesh. They have never taken credit for that, and we have never given credit to them as well. Even on the Padda bridge, we hardly mentioned China. That's the interesting part. So my point is not, the binary position. What I'm saying, that in a multipolar world, what you are going to see, rightly or wrongly, that one country can't impose its will on the other. And I say that to China also. If China thinks that everything will be China dominated, it can't do. If you remember how Bangladesh government reacted very sharply when a thing came out from one of their ambassadors regarding this Indo-Pacific thing, and say, no, Bangladesh can take care of itself. That's the body language I'm saying. Bangladesh can openly say now, our Prime Minister has been very open in the parliament. I've seen. Go back to last 50 years of parliamentary discussion. When do you see a sitting Prime Minister? If you're in the opposition, you can say a lot of things. When can you see a sitting Prime Minister directly pointing out to a particular country for its role back in 71, not to mention its role in 1975? Where was democracy and human rights then? So this very fact of human rights, and it sounds very good, where was democracy and human rights in Afghanistan for last 20 years? And then suddenly you leave that country and go to somewhere else. So my point is, yes, is one can use those things, but I don't think you can take things very far when it comes to actual foreign policy making, etc. So I was not going into the binary, and I was not going to, at least in the domestic politics and election. Maybe Kausar can organize another one on Bangladesh election. I would love to give my understanding of what is happening in Bangladesh. But very quickly, Bangladesh definitely has deficit on different areas. There's no doubt about it. And nobody is trying to hide that. We have deficit on human rights. We have deficit in democracy. Our election deficit. But, and this is the big but, those cannot be resolved by outside powers. Let me be very clear and blunt on that. It has to be resolved by us, by people. Because Bangladesh is an old civilization. Don't forget that. 6th century BC. Look at the number of people, the sacrifice that Bangladesh has done. Look at just Dhaka University, the sacrifice that it has done. So even in getting the democracy to the extent that we got, look at the sacrifice. So if there has to be any change in Bangladesh, and there will be change, you can't stop humans' aspirations, it has to be Bangladesh. As much as American democracy, I don't think American democracy can be fixed by Russia or China or any other country. It has to be fixed by the Americans. It has a serious deficit. Let's point out. If you talk with I have a good number of Black American friends. If you are into Black Lives Matter, you will see the deficit is a serious one. If you look at the Native Americans, even Canada, I can go back to Canada. We, with the help of Dr. Kausar, we had a Native Canadian come to Bangladesh. And the picture that she presented was a very different picture from the mainstream Canadian picture, to the point that my colleagues were saying that, look, you have shattered our understanding of what Canada is all about. So, you see, we know only one understanding of a country because we read one kind of newspaper and the media. Underneath, it's very problematic. Now, Canada has a problem with the Native Americans, but can Bangladesh resolve it? Of course not. Can America? No, it has to be resolved by the Canadian, and they're trying their level best to do that. So, on the issue, yes, I agree that there are serious issues on humanitarian, etc. But look at the Human Development Index. Fairly speaking, look at the longevity, number of years that Bangladeshis can live. We have surpassed both Pakistan and India. And we are almost near to China. Now, one has to you can be critical of Bangladesh on many issues, and I am, but we cannot say that this is not the good thing that Bangladesh has done. Look at the vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. We are in the first 5. How is it possible? Because it has a fantastic infrastructure. Nobody can blame. Look at the number of people who have got the vaccines and how organized it was. 170 million people, Hilal. It's a huge country. And the way the vaccines were given is absolutely mind-boggling. And I'm telling you. But Bangladesh has succeeded. There are more vaccinated people in Bangladesh than in the United States currently as I'm speaking. Now, one has to give some credit to this country. Yes, it has a problem. But all those problems, I'm afraid, cannot be done by looking into Europe's understanding of human rights. Because if you open that door, believe it or not, I don't have to bring my African friends here. Africa has a totally different understanding of what Europe is all about. So, I don't want to do that because that's not going to take us very far. I understand the concern of Europe, but I don't think by pointing that out, and as I said, Narendra Modi's visit clearly pointed out that the binary that was there between democracy and non-democratic country, that's no longer there, because the United States can have an 180-degree turnaround and make a relationship with Narendra Modi, which has really made a lot of people puzzled. How is it possible? But that's what the United States has always been. I don't see it's a difference, because they would look at their national interest. Let's put it that way. The national interest is fundamental. Now, we don't have to go to Lord Palmerston, who said, national interest is the only thing that one has to look into. But it is vital thing for a country. Forget geopolitics, forget, at the end of the day, the national interest in a capitalist world is profit. Let's put it that way. I want to make money. Now, that's critical. We sometimes we forget that we are living in a capitalism world. We are not living in we are living in a capitalist world. Now, what is the mantra of capitalism? The mantra of capitalism is profit, profit, profit. Simple as that. So, if the United States think that by trying to, engage with India, particularly at this time when it has all the negative image when it comes to democracy, but if they think that they can do a better business and at the same time also keep China, a little bit away, why not? It's a good game. Now, on that, I think they're making a mistake because India is not a puppy. India is a power. Let's put it that way. India probably would be interested in the business, but not on the geopolitical compulsion of the United States. I think the United States is making the same mistake that they made with Pakistan. If you remember, all the time they wanted Pakistan with them earlier, against communism, against China and what you call Soviet Union. And that's the reason they allowed Pakistan to join CENTO and SEATO. Okay? But in Pakistan's mind, it was more India. It was, Pakistan wanted everything from that just to, make a deterrence with India. I don't think Pakistan was interested in doing what the United States wanted. And similarly, I see the similarity here. I don't think India would be just popping up with United States. It doesn't have the structure. Its relationship with Russia is huge, and it has a kind of a friendship with Russia that goes back to history. Don't forget, 1971 is a tremendous history that they have. And of course, as we speak, single country trading regime of India is China. We forget, even in pandemic, this is the interesting part, even during the pandemic, the business got up between India and China. So I think we need to look into it more, as I said, in a much more complex kind of framework that we have. There has to be more layers. But I understand your frustration to some extent, if I can use that word, when it comes to Bangladesh in some of the areas. Of course, on the Rohingya issue, we are all a little bit frustrated, but we hope the tripartite approach that China has taken up with Bangladesh and Myanmar will work. But at the same time, I want to flag that let other countries also join the tripartite. I see no reason why Delhi and Japan would not, because they have fantastic relationship with both the countries. And if any of these countries can resolve the Rohingya issue, believe it or not, their diplomats would really emerge as one of the top diplomats, almost the way Turkey has emerged as one of the top negotiating country by negotiating with Russia and Ukraine on the grain deal. So I'm still hopeful that things will change, but I agree that at this point, as we speak, both the points that you have raised, we have serious deficit.
Thank you, sir. We are absolutely at the end. But before I leave, I just have one very quick comment from you, Professor, about Bangladesh's recent move to join BRICS. And of course, I understand, given the context that you shared with us this evening, the world is moving towards multipolarity. That is understandable given the current geopolitical dynamics unfolding in the world. Of course, the Ukraine war has given a lot of insights about the upcoming world. But do you think countries like Bangladesh would benefit greater in terms of moving towards certain blocks? Then it becomes a little bit of, in contrast with the neutralized, policy that Bangladesh always takes, that non-alignment. So do you think it is sort of in contradiction of the Bangladesh non-alignment policy?
The first thing that we need to keep in mind is that BRICS is not a military alliance. Bangladesh will not hesitate to join any groups wherever it is formed, so long it is not a military alliance. So we are into name SARC, BBIN, BISIM, name any IPO, name anything, we are into it, so long it's a economic alliance, economic grouping. So since BRICS is an economic group, you know, and we have interesting countries there, of course, China and India, both are there, which is very interesting. And we see the number of countries who wants to join include Saudi Arabia, Iran. No, look at some other countries. You can easily see that there's no reason why Bangladesh should not join. Bangladesh, and it's not like that we are trying to join now. We have flagged it way back. In fact, that we want to be part of BRICS, because, as I said, Bangladesh would not hesitate to join any economic groupings. Doesn't matter. The only condition that Bangladesh will always have is that my relationship with you should not be based on the principle that I can't have a relationship with another. So just because I'm joining BRICS, I am not at all alienating the United States and IPA. No, I think that's the mistake we did. I would be against you, or I would not go if you make it a military alliance. You see, United States wanted us to join in the Afghanistan war. Right? If you are familiar, when NATO got into Afghanistan on a weird principle, because Afghanistan is not a NATO member anyway, but NATO countries, as you know, supported the war in Afghanistan. Bangladesh said no. Even in the Iraq war, we said no. Even in the Kuwait war, we said no. When we were much, we were not that powerful. And regime-wise, there's a consensus that we are not going to go engage. And we are number one peacekeeper in the world. And we have become peacekeeper number one, not because of any country's, wish or any country's kind of giving us advantage. We became number one because of the professionalism that our military has shown. One has to give credit to that. So my point here is, there's no earthly reason why Bangladesh should not want to join. But if BRICS at any moment of time would change into a military alliance, which is absolutely an impossibility given the kind of things countries you have, there's no reason why it not. But at the same time, Bangladesh should make it point to the United States that we are not alienated to it. Rather, and this is important, I want to end by saying, rather, the more Bangladesh develops, doesn't matter from where you are getting the funds and all, other countries would benefit. I'll give you one example. The World Bank did say no to Padda Bridge. Padda Bridge got built. Yes, we got support from China, but who is benefiting from that bridge? Not only China. Everybody is benefiting because the cost has gone down. So our ready-made garments, for example, where our market is in the West, they are benefiting. So whatever development that would come via BRICS, it to develop other countries. That's the win-win situation. I think the IPO is flagging that there are possibilities of focusing on theory of abundance and not on the theory of scarcity.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'm sorry for your brilliant speech. I think we would spend another hour listening to Professor Imtiaz, such an eloquent speaker himself. Thank you for being with us. Dear audience, we are going to end our session today. Just recapitulate some of the points that Professor Imtiaz highlighted. Most interestingly, I think 3 Ps that he emphasized, that what lies ahead in response to that part of the question. He said that Bangladesh should focus more on development of human potentials than politics and professionalism. I think this is the biggest takeaway we get from our today's session. And also do not forget, dear audience, that Bangladesh is a civilizational a country that was born out of a very old civilization. It has not started from 1971. Often there is an understanding that we count Bangladesh's birth from 1971 and then we calculate whatever has been achieved. But Professor Dr. Imtiaz very eloquently mentioned that it is inherent in the culture of Bangladesh, the culture of peace, the culture of non-alignment. And this is what is fundamental to the IPO that has been shared. And I think this is a wonderful recap of the whole strategy itself. And we wish best of luck, Bangladesh, in navigating a very, I would say, multipolar world, as Professor rightly emphasized number of times in his deliberation. And I think we have yet to see, but Bangladesh has already promised a lot of things. And in this particular important year of election, which is one of the ways we view democracy in the West, but nonetheless, we would like to see a very prosperous region, a very stable region where everybody benefits, as Professor rightly mentioned. If the peace and development happens, then everybody wins from that part of this whole equation. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Imtiaz, who has always been supporting Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada. Whenever we approached him, Professor was always ready to come in and share his wisdom with us. Thank you so much. And on a final note, as the Professor has mentioned, that Bangladesh is also the leading UN peacekeeping forces contributing countries. So Conflict and Resilience Research Institute is publishing a book reflecting Bangladesh's contribution, and our publisher is Cambridge Scholars Publishing in Cambridge, UK. And when it will be published, we'll definitely bring another panel and showcase Bangladesh's contribution in peacekeeping in various ways. With this note, thank you so much. Stay well wherever you are. Thank you, Professor Dr. Imtiaz and Dr. Helal, for joining us. Bye-bye.